I've robbed 12 banks in 7 states. I have a little over $9 million in cash.
The film opens with a professional thief named Tom Dolan who is robbing a bank. Popularly known as the In-N-Out Bandit, he has managed to pull off 8 bank robberies in different states over the past 6 years without leaving a trace. Police forces have not even found out who the thief is. A psychology graduate student named Annie Wilkins works as a receptionist at a storage facility, and Tom goes there to store the stolen money. After getting to know each other, they have a heart-to-heart conversation, and it's clear that Tom likes her. After a year of their relationship, Tom offers to buy a property and move in together. Annie accepts his request, ensuring she no longer has to endure the hardships of divorce and the problems in her previous relationship. Although she is happy, she doesn't know what Tom's life is like. However, Tom is very much in love with her and intends to live an honest life with her. So he calls the FBI the next morning to confess and turn himself in. During a call with Special Agent Sam Baker, Tom discusses his career as an in-and-out bandit, noting that he robbed over $9 million from 12 different banks in 7 states. Tom offers Baker and his partner, Sean Myers, a compromise whereby Baker would receive a lighter sentence in exchange for returning all the money he had stolen, requesting a minimum security prison near the city with full visitation privileges for up to 2 years because he wants to prove to Annie that he needs an honest life with her. After Tom tries his best, Baker informs him that he will meet him at the Charleston Hotel the next day. Baker doesn't take his confession too seriously and thinks it's false because the FBI has already received many confessions about the In-N-Out Bandit. So he assigned this case to Special Agents John Nivens and Ramon Hall and made them responsible for prosecuting it. After 2 days, no agents have come to follow up on his confession, so Tom calls the police again, talking to Myers, who tells him the case has been given to 2 other good agents and hangs up. At that moment, Tom opens the door and meets John and Ramon. To believe his confession, they ask him to give them information no police have discovered. To confirm his identity, Tom reveals that he mostly hit small-town banks that had funds before the 1950s. According to him, there was always an empty building next to the robbed bank, which was very important to him as a common wall. He reveals that all the robberies happened on Friday evening, and he used the hatch to get into the banks. Carefully, using gelatine for bolts and nuts, he drilled holes through the vault, and when he collected the cash, he patched up the wall to hide his tracks. After hearing his confession, John and Ramon insist that before any deal to reduce his punishment, they must first know where the money is, and they will not make a deal until they see the money. The 2 agents are about to leave, and Tom agrees to inform them where the money is kept. Tom gives them the information on the storage unit where the money is hidden and offers to accompany them if they want to check it out on their own. However, Ramon rejects his request, takes the key from him, and asks him to wait at the hotel. They search for the money's whereabouts. However, John's attitude changes after discovering it and seeing that Tom is being honest about everything. Because of his selfishness and unscrupulous mentality, John uses it to his advantage. And instead of using the stolen money as evidence, he shows that he intends to confiscate it. He tries to convince Ramon to steal the money so his children can get a higher education and pay off their mortgage. But still, Ramon, being a principled man, refuses. Tom patiently waits for their return, and John's constant insistence and pressure on him force Ramon to cooperate with him. Suddenly, Annie appears out of nowhere and shocks them. They frame themselves as Tom's friends and reveal nothing about money. Tom is an ex-Marine, and Annie assumes they are his old friends. Ramon and John confirm, and Annie wants to know if Tom plans to move into the house they saw. When John and Ramon confirm her words, Annie is pleased and leaves them. Myers informs Baker about Tom's confession, leading him to believe no one has followed up on the matter. John and Ramon hide the money in an unknown place and go to the hotel. On the other hand, Annie leaves the storage facility to meet Tom at the hotel. John and Ramon return to Tom and confirm that they found the money. John plans to kill Tom to leave no trace of the robbery, but to stop him, Tom reveals that the money they found is $3 million, and there are still $6 million left. Just as John inquires about the remaining funds, Baker knocks on the door. After John decides to keep their plan a secret from Baker, he forces Ramon to let him in by lowering his revolver. Baker enters the room and is surprised to see John's gun. Tom gives him a signal, but it's too late, and John kills him. Tom rushes towards him to defend himself, but both fall out of the window. Simultaneously, he sees Annie in front of him in shock and asks her to run. Tom is forced to run away with her, and Ramon and John's shots cannot stop them. While chasing them, John and Ramon discover that Tom has stolen Ramon's gun and try to catch up with him. Annie is taken aback and immediately demands answers from Tom, who assures her that he will provide them once they are safe. John and Ramon continue to search until they find Tom's car in an alley, but no one is inside, and they don't know where they ran off. Tom tells Annie the truth about who he is while Annie is shocked by the lies she has been told. Tom admits that he hasn't killed anyone and hasn't spent even a dime of the money he stole. Annie, who has known him for a year, is so shaken to learn that he has been robbing banks that she wants to know why. Tom then tells her the full story, explaining that it all started when his father was fired from his job as a welder after 35 years at the same company. Also, the company's CEO stole the workers' pension fund during big embezzlement, and his father was denied a pension. According to Tom, his father did not seek legal recourse but ended things because he could not cope with his mother's death. A month later, Tom decided to rob the bank where the company's CEO kept his funds. He claims he continued to rob banks for fun and excitement, even though he didn't spend a dime. Furthermore, he claims that meeting her helped him prioritize his love for her before material wealth or excitement, and that she was the reason he hadn't committed a robbery in the past year. Back at the Charleston Hotel, Myers mourns the death of his colleague and makes a solemn promise to identify his killer. At the same time, Tom warns Annie that she may face charges in connection with Baker's death and begs her to leave town so that no one suspects her involvement. John explains to Myers how they lost Baker before they got to Tom and identifies Tom as his killer. It also says they haven't discovered anything in the warehouse, as Tom predicted. Tom accompanies Annie to get on the bus and promises her that they will meet again. Also, Annie asks him to prove his innocence in Baker's death, and they say goodbye by hugging each other. The next morning, Myers, John, and Ramon access Tom's file to find out the details of his life. After Annie is identified by security footage outside the hotel, they discuss her recent divorce. Myers tells them to look for Tom, hoping to get information on his whereabouts. Moments later, Annie calls Tom in the warehouse to inform him that there is CCTV footage of John and Ramon removing the boxes from his unit. She claims she returned because she couldn't risk losing the evidence since the recorder automatically overwrites itself every 2 days. Tom asks her to leave immediately and calls 911 to send the police there, but at the same time he sees a van and decides to go to the storage facility himself. Just before Annie leaves her office, John arrives and asks her where he hid the remaining $6 million. When she tries to escape, John hits her and looks for the memory card of the CCTV footage. Despite her best efforts to injure John with scissors, Annie cannot escape from him, and John hits his head hard on the table, which knocks her unconscious. Just then, Ramon intervenes just in time to dissuade John from killing her, begging him to flee the scene before Annie is discovered. Tom arrives shortly after they leave and takes Annie to the hospital without delay. Upon seeing the cops, he quickly leaves the hospital, calls the FBI, and uses Myers to contact John. As Myers overhears this conversation, John pretends not to know about Annie, and Tom informs him of the threat he plans to make. Intrigued by Annie's story, Myers decides to go to the hospital to see her situation. Moments later, one of the local police officers recognizes Tom in the street and chases him. John and Ramon move towards him after knowing his location.
I lost him. He's headed westbound on Lincoln.
Tom parks behind some bushes to hide from the police. When he sees Ramon and John, he purposely backs up the van and slams into their vehicle from behind. Trapped in the predicament and unable to get out of the vehicle, John starts shooting at Tom, and Tom fires back. Moments later, Myers sees Tom on the street and starts chasing him. Tom waits in his ambush and they start to fight. During the fight, Tom admits that John is guilty and says that John also attacked Annie. Tom disarms him, and Myers urges Tom to do the right thing, assuring Tom that he will be held accountable. But Tom believes he has tried it before and is determined to do it his way. Tom throws Ramon's gun at him to prove his words and runs away. Later that night, after staying at a hotel, he quickly calls the hospital he left. He learns that Annie cannot speak at the moment, but will recover soon. On the other hand, John rushes to the hospital to make sure Annie doesn't survive, but doesn't intervene when he realizes Myers is in her room. The next morning, Myers confronts John, questioning his thoughts on Tom's story and the whereabouts of the stolen funds. Despite his best efforts to keep Myers from finding out, John believes that Tom is making up the story to get away with his lies. Myers hands over Ramon's gun and then tells them both to return to work. John selfishly insists on continuing down the wrong path, while Ramon is terrified that Myers will discover their deception. That night, Tom decides to follow Ramon home from work. In bed, Ramon's wife notices his anxiety and asks him to do the right thing. Ramon does not reveal anything, but says that all his efforts are for her and the children's sake, and asks her not to forget this if anything happens. Suddenly, the sound of the garage door pulls Ramon there. Tom suddenly disarms him and asks him to do what is right and help restore his innocence. Unwilling to be John's accomplice, Ramon informs Tom that he secretly stole the warehouse security camera tape from Annie, a fact John is unaware of. Furthermore, he advises Tom to go save her life and get her out of the hospital because John is going to kill her. Tom rushes to the hospital to take Annie, and after making sure she's okay, he sneaks her back into his hotel room. The next morning, he calls Myers while buying equipment at a hardware store. He informs him that Annie is with him and does not consider her involved in what will happen. Tom's words worry Myers. However, he cannot dissuade Tom from the action he is planning to organize. Afterwards, he returns to his hotel room. He assembles an explosive bomb, and the following day, Annie, who has recently recovered, is determined to accompany him. A short distance from John's residence, Tom calls him and demands that John confess his misdeeds. But John threatens, so Tom scares him of the unexpected by counting down from 10. Just when his house is about to catch fire, John jumps out.
1.
After that, Tom gives Annie the CCTV memory card he got from Ramon and asks her to help him get it to Myers. At the same time, John reaches the hideout, calls Ramon, and asks him to join him. Meanwhile, Myers takes the camera's memory card from Annie in the warehouse. She claims that Tom is a good man, and to show his goodwill, she unlocks another storage room next to it to show him the remaining $6 million. John equips himself with 2 guns and then opens the door for Ramon, unaware that Tom is with him by pretending to take Ramon hostage at gunpoint. Tom asks John to put down his gun and informs him that he took the security memory card for the cameras from Ramon. Enraged by his partner's betrayal, John gets into a fight with Ramon and shoots and kills him, then attacks Tom, and both fire at each other. After the exchange of gunfire, John escapes from the building with the money and Tom is injured. Moments later, Tom calls him to inform him that he has planted a pressure-sensitive bomb under the seat of his vehicle. He can't get out of the car and has to wait for the police bomb disposal squad. Tom takes the tape recording of John's confession from Ramon's corpse and is saddened by his death. Later, while John's vehicle is surrounded by Myers and the police, the bomb disposal agent informs that the explosive device is unexploded and there is actually no bomb. John is furious, but Myers wastes no time arresting him for trying to make off with the stolen money. When Myers returns to his office, he is faced with an envelope on his desk. The recording voice reveals that John was guilty of stealing the money and that he was the one who killed Ramon. That night, he meets Annie and thanks Tom for the way he brought John down. Tom calls him because he is still ready to accept his mistakes and believes in a brighter future. He turns himself in, and Myers eventually promises to do whatever he can to shorten Tom's sentence after Tom confesses that he wants to be a good person.